In the small town of Gyovren, Bulgaria, there are a group of Eastern Orthodox Christians who, on certain feast days of the saints, come to a forest and light candles, leave blessed icons and coins in the mouth of a cave known as the Devil's Throat, in memory of Orpheus, the son of Apollo, and husband to Eurydice. For it is thought that this cave was the same cave Orpheus descended into to talk to Hades and demand his wife be returned to the realm of the living. Now you may be asking yourself, how is it the case that so many Christians are venerating a legendary Thracian demigod, prophet and musician? The story behind such a notion goes way back to the earliest Christians and their claim to the venerable figure. One of the first well-known and erudite Christians who lived in the 2nd century, Justin the Philosopher, considered a saint in all the churches, believed that Orpheus was one of the prophetic voices in antiquity that pointed to the Christian doctrine of monotheism, due to the fact that he had met Moses sometime during his life. He writes in his address to the Greeks,
"At all events, we must remind you what Orpheus, who was, as one might say, your first teacher of polytheism, latterly addressed to his son Musaeus and to the other legitimate auditors concerning the one and only God. And he spoke thus, 'There is one Zeus alone, one sun, one hell, one Bacchus, and in all things but one God. Nor of all these as diverse let me speak.' And when he swears, he says, 'Now I adjure you by the highest heaven, the work of the great God, the only wise, and I adjure you by the Father's voice, which first he uttered when he established the whole world by his counsel.' Here he calls the word voice, for the sake of the poetical meter. And that this is so is manifest from the fact that a little further on, where the meter permits him, he names it word. For he said, 'Take the word divine to guide your steps.'"
Now, this account of Orpheus is not necessarily promoting him as a great figure, but Justin the Philosopher takes these Orphic hymns to be prophesying that one God exists as Father, and that he creates using his voice or will. This is very much something Christians took seriously due to the fact that Jesus was thought to be the Word becoming flesh, as written in the Gospel of John. However, as we go into the next century, we see that the seeds are being put in place for Orpheus's sainthood. Coming into the 3rd century, Clement of Alexandria becomes a towering figure in the realm of Orthodox Christian theology. As a catechetical leader of the Alexandrian school of theology, he's seen with great esteem among the various members of the church, either in the laity or the clergy. In Eusebius's ecclesiastical history, he cites one letter given to Clement, where he is addressed as,
"The blessed presbyter, a man virtuous and approved, whom you yourselves also know and will recognize."
Clement of Alexandria takes the promotion of Orpheus as a prophet, which was claimed by Justin the Philosopher, and goes 3 steps farther with it. In his exhortation to the heathen, chapter 7, he writes,
"In this venturous manner has he on the stage brought truth before the spectators. But the Thracian Orpheus, the son of Oeagrus, hierophant and poet at once, after his exposition of the orgies and his theology of idols, introduces a palinode of truth with true solemnity, though tardily singing the strain, 'I shall utter to whom it is lawful, but let the doors be closed nevertheless against all the profane. But do you hear, O Musaeus, offspring of the light-bringing moon? For I will declare what is true. And let not these things which once appeared in your breast rob you of dear life, but looking to the divine word, apply yourself to it, keeping right the seat of intellect and feeling, and walk well in the straight path, and to the immortal King of the universe alone direct your gaze.'" Thus far, Orpheus at last understood that he had been in error. "But linger no longer, O man, endued with varied wisdom, but turn and retrace your steps and propitiate God."
Now, this is a very interesting admission. Here, Clement makes the case that Orpheus was more than a prophet, but also repented of his sins, and was aware that his early hedonistic lifestyle of idol worship was wrong. This echoes a concept in Christian theology known as the virtuous pagan, which conforms with what Paul calls in chapter 2 of the Romans, the law written on the heart. However, this in itself doesn't explain whether or not Orpheus was saved and brought to heaven. For this, we must go a bit later and talk about St. Catherine of Alexandria. Catherine of Alexandria, a daughter of Constus, the governor of Alexandria, was best known as being martyred under the behest of Emperor Maxentius. She was known as a philosopher and a debater. One of her debates were included in the writings of Demetrius of Rostov, an 18th century Russian bishop of the Eastern Orthodox Church, showing how late this material becomes cherished in Eastern Europe. She writes,
Then, having opened for us the gates of paradise, closed by evil, he rose on the third day and ascended into heaven from whence he came. He sent down the Holy Spirit upon his disciples, and they went about preaching his divinity, in which you also, O philosopher, ought to believe, so that you may become his true servant. For he is merciful and summons all who have sinned, saying, Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Believe then your own teachers and gods, Plato, I say, Orpheus and Apollonius, who although unwillingly, plainly confessed Christ to be God.
Now, this passage is referencing a specific reading of Matthew 12:40 and Ephesians 4:9, where it says,
For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth.
And,
What does he ascended mean, except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions?
this is specifically recalled by St. John Damascene in the 6th century in his exposition of the Orthodox faith.
For no other thing has subdued death, expiated the sin of the first parent, despoiled Hades, bestowed the resurrection, granted the power to us of contemning the present and even death itself, prepared the return to our former blessedness, opened the gates of paradise.
This is Jesus going into Abraham's bosom and taking all the prophets, patriarchs, philosophers, and good people to heaven. This is the fate of Orpheus. There is much more I could talk about in the history of the Christian imagination. For instance, there was a popular Christianized version of the Orpheus story from the 14th century called Sir Orfeo, who recasts Orpheus as a king who bargains for his dead wife in Hades. If we wanted to extend these parallels to Judaism, there have been synagogues such as the Dura Europos synagogue, unearthed by archaeologists, which dates back to 245 AD, which looks similar to the interior of an Eastern Orthodox church and presents a large icon of Orpheus in it. Ultimately, the connection behind this figure and the Abrahamic religions is quite strong. And with that, you have just attained true gnosis. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'd like to thank my members, Morgan Silva, Marilyn Cook, Edna Bozeman. Make sure to sign up for a YouTube membership. For only $3 a month, you can access exclusive video essays early,